She thought she could humiliate me in front of everyone. Everyone laughed that night, until I showed them what real humiliation looks like. That if you've ever been betrayed by the one person who swore they'd never hurt you, stay with me to the end. And before we dive in, hit that subscribe, like, and comment to tell me what you would have done in my place. It all started one ordinary Thursday evening. I was sitting in my recliner after work, TV humming softly, just another quiet night. My wife, Laura, walked in with that kind of smile that makes you nervous before she even speaks. I did something and you won't like it, but I'm going to make it sound innocent smile. She kicked off her heels, poured herself a glass of wine, and said casually, "So, about the barbecue this weekend." Her tone was too light, too rehearsed. "Yeah?" I asked. "What about it?" She swirled her glass, pretending to study the wine. "I, invited someone you might not expect." I looked up. "Who?" "Remember Evan? From college." I froze. "Her ex-boyfriend. The guy she used to call the one who got away." "Why?" I asked flatly. "He's just going through a tough time. Lost his job, got divorced. I ran into his sister at the store. She said he could use some cheering up. I thought, why not? It's a big backyard, more the merrier." She smiled again, too wide, too fake that I felt a heat build in my chest, but I didn't raise my voice. "So, let me get this straight. You just decided to invite your ex to our home for a party with my friends and family." "Oh, come on," she said, laughing. "It's not like that. We're adults, right? You're not jealous, are you?" That tone, mocking, almost amused, cut deeper than she realized. "No," I said quietly. "Not jealous." "Good," she said, pecking my cheek. "I knew you'd be mature about it." But that night, lying in bed beside her, staring at the ceiling, something in me shifted. It wasn't rage, it was something colder. She thought she had me figured out, that I'd play the part of the quiet, agreeable husband while she flirted with nostalgia in front of an audience. She was wrong. Over the next 2 days, I watched her preparations. She called the caterer twice, ordered her favorite wine, and spent hours picking out an outfit. Every little thing she did screamed excitement, but not for the barbecue. For him. On Friday, while she was in the shower, I saw her phone light up. A message preview flashed. "Evan, can't wait to see you. Been too long." She had his name saved as Elaine. Clever. I didn't open the message. I didn't need to. I'd seen enough to work. I couldn't focus. The image of her smile, that giddy energy, gnawed at me. I started thinking, if she could play games, so could I. That evening, I called an old friend of mine, Jake. We'd gone to college with Evan. Jake still had connections. He knew people. And within an hour, I had what I needed. Evan wasn't just going through a rough patch. He was in a relationship, a serious one, with a woman named Claire, and judging from social media, she was very real, very loyal, and probably had no clue what her boyfriend was up to. That's when the idea came. A plan, quiet but sharp, began to form in my mind. I didn't know how yet, but I knew this. If Laura wanted Evan at that party, she'd get him, and I'd make sure he brought company. The next day, while Laura was out buying decorations, I sat at my computer and typed out a message to Claire. "Hi, Claire. My name's Mark. I think we should talk about Evan. Are you free to meet for coffee?" I hit send before I could second guess it. That evening, Laura came home humming, a rare sound lately. She tossed a new dress onto the bed and asked, "What do you think?" "It's perfect," I said, smiling faintly. "You're not mad about Evan?" "Not at all. I think inviting him was a great idea." Her eyes brightened. "Really?" "Absolutely. I even think he should bring someone." "Someone?" "Yeah," I said evenly. "If he's seeing anyone, it'd be rude to leave her out." She froze, her lipstick halfway applied. "Oh, I don't think he's..." I cut her off gently. "You said it yourself. We're all adults, right?" She forced a laugh, but her reflection in the mirror betrayed her. Her hand trembled slightly. She didn't say another word. Later that night, when she was asleep beside me, I checked my phone. Claire had replied, "Coffee works. Tomorrow, noon." I smiled in the dark. Laura thought she was planning a party. What she didn't know was that the real event was already being set in motion. The next day, I arrived at the cafe 10 minutes early, my nerves calm, but my pulse steady and strong, like I'd already stepped into the next phase of something inevitable. When Claire walked in, I recognized her immediately. She wasn't flashy or loud, just effortlessly put together, the kind of woman who carries herself with quiet confidence. She looked around until she spotted me, then walked straight over. "Mark?" she asked, her voice clear and cool. "Claire," I said, standing to shake her hand. "Thanks for coming." She sat across from me, folding her hands neatly on the table. "Your message sounded serious. What's this about?" I didn't ease into it. "It's about Evan and my wife." Her eyes didn't widen, didn't blink, just sharpened. "Go on," she said. I told her everything. About the party. About Laura's sudden obsession with planning it perfectly. About the text messages I'd seen and the way she lit up when his name came up. I watched Claire's expression shift, her calm exterior cracking just slightly. "So," she said after a long pause, "you're saying my boyfriend's been lying to me and sneaking around with a married woman?" "That's exactly what I'm saying," I replied. "And you're sure?" I nodded. "I have no reason to make this up. I'd rather be wrong. But I'm not." She exhaled slowly, staring down at her coffee. I knew something was off. He's been distant, secretive. Said he was helping a friend through a divorce, spending weekends out giving advice. I should have known. Her tone wasn't angry yet. It was cold, like anger had burned away and left something sharper. "When's the party?" she asked. "Tomorrow evening." "And he'll be there?" "Oh, he'll be there," I said. Laura made sure of it. She sat back, considering something. "Then maybe it's time we both stopped wondering and started showing." "Meaning?" "Meaning," she said slowly. "You invite him, and I'll make sure he comes with a surprise." I raised an eyebrow. "You're thinking what I'm thinking?" "Probably worse," she said with a faint smile. "But we'll need to time it perfectly." We spent the next half hour crafting a plan that felt more like choreography than revenge. She'd arrive late, once the party was in full swing. I'd keep Laura and Evan comfortable, relaxed, off guard. When Claire walked in, she'd make sure everyone saw her, make sure every word she spoke hit like a bullet wrapped in politeness. It wasn't about shouting or drama. It was about precision. By the time I left the cafe, the air felt lighter. Not because I was happy, but because there was clarity now. The guessing was over. Laura was at home when I returned, arranging candles on the patio table, humming some old love song. "You're in a good mood," she said without looking up. "Just glad everything's coming together," I replied. "You talked to Evan?" "Yeah. He said he's bringing someone," she said quickly, then hesitated. "But she probably won't come." "Oh, that's too bad," I said evenly. "I'm sure it would have been nice to meet her." She gave me a strange look, maybe wondering how much I knew, but she didn't push it. That night, she tried to be affectionate, even playful. Maybe guilt was starting to chew at her, or maybe she was just trying to cover her tracks. Either way, I played along. The morning of the party, the house buzzed with the smell of grilled food, the clatter of dishes, the hum of music. Friends texted to confirm. My sister called, my coworkers sent messages. Laura floated through it all like a queen preparing for her coronation. Around noon, I got a text from Claire. "Everything's set. He thinks I'm out of town for the weekend. I'll show up around 8. Let me know when the time's right." I stared at that message for a long moment, then typed back, "Perfect." The hours crawled by. By late afternoon, Laura disappeared upstairs to get ready, emerging in a dress I'd never seen before. Deep red, too glamorous for a backyard barbecue. "Well?" she asked, turning with a smile. "You look unforgettable," I said. Exactly what I was going for. She winked, not realizing how true my words would be. At 6 sharp, the first guests arrived. Laughter, music, glasses clinking. The whole evening unfolded like something out of a magazine. Everyone said the same thing. How radiant Laura looked, how happy we seemed. I smiled, shook hands, laughed when appropriate. But inside, I was counting minutes. At 7:15, he arrived. Evan, dressed like he was auditioning for a commercial, shirt crisp, hair perfect, charm turned up to 11. Laura spotted him immediately, her face lighting up in a way it hadn't for me in years. She greeted him with a hug that lasted a beat too long. "You made it," she said, her voice too high, too bright. "Wouldn't miss it," he said. Their eyes met, and in that moment, I knew. Every suspicion I'd had was true. They mingled, laughed, reminisced about old times while pretending it was all harmless nostalgia. I stayed polite, even friendly. I poured him a drink, clapped him on the shoulder, asked about work. He seemed almost relieved, like my calmness meant safety. That was the beauty of it. People mistake silence for weakness. But silence is just the sound of the fuse burning. At 8 o'clock, I slipped inside the house and sent a single text. Now. A minute later, the doorbell rang. I walked to the door and opened it with the same easy smile I'd used all evening. "Claire," I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "What a surprise. Come on in." The noise behind me softened, the way rooms do when something important is about to happen. And as she stepped through the doorway, poised and composed, I thought, "Laura, you brought this on yourself." And the night was just getting started. The moment Claire stepped into the house, time seemed to freeze. Conversations faded into uneasy murmurs, glasses hovered midair, and every pair of eyes turned toward the front door. She was stunning in a navy blue dress that managed to look both elegant and dangerous, like she'd come to collect a debt that no one realized was due. Laura stood near the patio doors, frozen mid-laugh, her face draining of color as she recognized the woman standing in her entryway. "Hi, everyone," Claire said sweetly, her voice cutting through the tension with surgical precision. "Sorry to crash the party, but I heard there's someone here I absolutely had to see." Her eyes flicked toward Evan, and for a moment, he looked like a man standing in front of an oncoming train. Laura's smile faltered, confusion flashing into panic. "Oh, I didn't realize you two knew each other," she said weakly. Claire tilted her head. "Oh, we know each other very well. Don't we, Evan?" The crowd stirred, curious now, sensing blood in the water. Evan tried to laugh, but it came out cracked. "Claire, what are you doing here?" "You tell me," she said, walking toward him with a confidence that made everyone instinctively step aside. "You said you were spending the evening helping a friend, right? That's what you told me this morning." It's not what you think," he stammered. "Oh, I think it's exactly what I think." Her tone stayed light, but her eyes were ice. "You've been helping a friend, all right, a married one." The room went completely still. I stood near the kitchen island, pretending to sip my drink, watching everything unfold like a spectator at the best theater production in town. Laura tried to regain control, her voice trembling but still dripping with false charm. "I'm not sure what you've heard, but there's obviously some misunderstanding." Claire laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "Misunderstanding? You mean like the misunderstanding where your husband here thinks this is just a birthday party, not a reunion with your boyfriend?" A ripple went through the guests. Laura's friends exchanged uncertain glances. Someone gasped quietly. Evan's hand twitched like he wanted to reach for Claire, but didn't dare. "Claire, please," he whispered. "Don't do this here." She turned to face the crowd. "Oh, I'm sorry, do you all feel awkward?" "Because I've been living awkward for months, wondering why my boyfriend was suddenly too busy to come home on weekends, why he had new perfume on his shirt, why he smiled at his phone like a teenager. Turns out, he was busy helping this lovely lady through her marital struggles." She looked at Laura again, her voice dropping just enough for everyone to lean in. "How's that marriage working out, by the way?" Laura's composure snapped. "You don't know what you're talking about. You're crazy." Claire's smile sharpened. "Crazy? Maybe, but not blind." She reached into her purse, pulled out her phone, and tapped the screen. "Let's see, this was 2 weeks ago." She turned the screen toward the crowd. There they were, Laura and Evan, sitting in a booth at a restaurant. his hand resting over hers. Gasps filled the room. And this one, Claire said, swiping again, was last month, outside a hotel downtown. Recognize that, honey. Laura's face went pale, then red, then pale again. Evan took a step forward, trying to grab the phone. Stop, he shouted, voice cracking. You're humiliating yourself. No, Claire said coldly. I'm humiliating both of you. That's the difference. Laura turned toward me then, desperate, her voice shaking. Mark, she's lying. You know I'd never. Enough? I said quietly. My calmness seemed to unnerve her more than any shouting could. You've done enough talking. The room had gone from party to courtroom in seconds, and I was the silent judge watching the verdict play out. Claire, not missing a beat, continued. You know what hurts the most, Evan? I defended you. I told my friends you were just stressed that you'd come around. Meanwhile, you were here, playing house with a married woman who thought she was clever enough to fool everyone. She turned back to Laura. Congratulations. You almost pulled it off. Laura's voice cracked. I didn't mean for this to happen. Of course you didn't, Claire interrupted. People like you never mean it. You just like attention until it burns you alive. Someone in the crowd muttered, My God. And that was when Laura finally broke, tears streaming down her face as she tried to grab Evan's arm. Say something, she pleaded. Tell them it's not what it looks like. But Evan couldn't. He stood frozen, ashamed and silent, his face a mix of fear and guilt. Claire slipped her phone back into her purse and straightened. Well, I think that's all the explaining I needed to do. Then, turning to me, she said, Mark, I believe the floor is yours. My heart was steady now. Every eye in the room was on me. I set my glass down, reached for the envelope sitting on the counter, and held it up. I wasn't going to do this tonight. I began, my voice low but clear. But since the truth's already on the table, I opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of papers. These are divorce papers. Signed. Dated. I was just waiting for the right moment to deliver them. Laura looked like she'd been struck. You're leaving me? She whispered. No, I said coldly. You already left. I'm just catching up. The silence was electric. Somewhere, a guest's phone camera clicked. You can keep your ex, I said. Seems like you two deserve each other. I handed her the envelope, turned toward the guests, and added, Thank you all for coming. Sorry for the entertainment, but I guess that's what you get when you mix lies with wine. Claire gave me a small nod of respect, the kind you give to someone who finally stands up after being knocked down too long. As I turned to leave, Laura reached out, her voice breaking. Please, Mark, don't do this in front of everyone. We can fix it. I stopped and looked back, my voice calm but final. You should have thought of that before you invited your past into our future. Then I walked out the front door into the cool night air, leaving behind the sound of whispers, broken glass, and the faint, bitter echo of her crying. And for the first time in years, I felt free. Outside, the night air felt cleaner than it had in months. The laughter and chaos still drifted from the house behind me, but it was distant now, like a bad dream I'd finally woken from. Claire followed me out a few seconds later, her heels clicking against the driveway. She looked calm, composed, almost satisfied, though the faint tremor in her hands betrayed the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. Well, she said, exhaling. That went about as smooth as an earthquake. I let out a dry laugh. You have a gift for understatement. We stood there in silence for a while, both of us staring at the glowing windows of the house. Inside, I could still hear Laura's voice breaking through the noise, begging someone to listen, to believe her version of the story. It didn't matter anymore. The truth had already been carved into everyone's memory. You sure you're okay? Claire asked finally. I'm fine, I said. Better than fine, actually. I feel finished. She nodded, crossing her arms. You did the right thing, you know. Most people just swallow the lie, pretend it never happened. You chose the hard way. Yeah, I said quietly, but the honest way. We exchanged a long look, one of mutual recognition. Two people who'd been betrayed by the same pair of liars, standing side by side in the wreckage. "You want a drink?" she asked suddenly, her tone light again. "There's a bar a few blocks away. Feels wrong to end a night like this without a toast." I smiled faintly. A toast to what? To freedom. To finally knowing who we're really dealing with. "Pick one." "Freedom works," I said. We walked down the street together, leaving behind the faint hum of gossip and music. The bar was half empty, dimly lit, and quiet enough that we could actually breathe. She ordered whiskey. I stuck with beer. For a while, neither of us spoke. It wasn't awkward, just reflective, like two people sitting after a storm, listening to the rain die out. "You know," she said finally, "when I first read your message, I thought you were some angry husband looking for a fight. I didn't expect this." "What did you expect?" "Something messy. Screaming, crying, maybe a dramatic scene in a parking lot." "But you," she smiled slightly, "you planned it like an engineer. Cold, precise, effective." "I had time to think," I said. "Anger burns out fast. Strategy lasts longer." She raised her glass. "To strategy." I clinked mine against hers. "And to being done with people who mistake kindness for weakness." We drank in silence for a while after that. Somewhere between the third sip and the last, I realized I hadn't thought about Laura once. Not about what she'd say, not about whether she'd beg or blame. She was already behind me, part of a story that no longer belonged to me. When I finally went home later that night, the house was quiet. Most of the guests had gone. The decorations still hung from the ceiling, drooping like deflated promises. The cake, half smashed, half uneaten, sat on the table, a reminder of what the evening had turned into. Laura was in the kitchen, eyes red, hair disheveled, her dress stained with frosting and tears. She looked at me like someone reaching for a life preserver in deep water. "Mark," she whispered, "please. You can't just walk away from all of this." I stood there for a long time, taking in the wreckage, the desperation in her voice, the emptiness that hung between us. "You already did, Laura," I said finally. "You just didn't notice when it happened." She tried to come closer, but I stepped back. "I'm not doing this anymore. Not the lies, not the pretending. We're done." Her face crumpled, but I didn't wait for more words. I turned, walked upstairs, packed a small bag, and left her standing there in the glow of the kitchen light. I spent the night at a hotel on the edge of town. For the first time in years, I slept through the night without waking up to arguments, excuses, or the heavy silence of resentment. The next morning, I got up early, checked out, and met Claire for breakfast. She looked different in the daylight, softer, but stronger somehow. "How's the queen of the ruin party?" she asked with a smirk. "Probably still cleaning icing out of her hair," I said. We both laughed, not cruelly, but with the strange relief of people who'd been freed from lies. Over the next few weeks, life settled into something new. The divorce went through faster than I expected. Laura didn't fight much. She couldn't. The evidence was too clear, the witnesses too many. Mutual friends drifted away from her, some quietly, some loudly. Word gets around fast when the truth's that public. As for Evan, I heard through the grapevine that Claire had made sure his reputation followed him like a shadow. He lost his girlfriend, his job connections, even a few friends who couldn't stomach the drama. He moved out of town not long after. Claire and I stayed in touch. At first, it was just coffee meetings to exchange updates, but soon those conversations started lasting longer. We talked about work, family, everything that came after betrayal. She was sharp, funny, the kind of person who looked you straight in the eye when she spoke. One evening, months later, we met at the same cafe where it had all started. She smiled across the table and said, "You ever think about how none of this would have happened if they hadn't lied?" "Every day," I said. "But then again, we'd probably still be stuck pretending everything was fine." "Exactly," she said. "They burned the bridge, but they lit the way out." That line stuck with me. Because she was right. Sometimes destruction isn't the end. It's the start of something honest. A few weeks later, We planned a trip together. Nothing dramatic, just a weekend by the coast, away from everything that used to define us. The air smelled like salt and possibility. Standing there on the pier, watching the sun sink into the water, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I was grateful, not for the pain, but for the clarity it gave me. I turned to Claire and said, "You know, they thought they broke us." She smiled. "No, they freed us." And for the first time, I believed it. If you've ever been betrayed, remember this: truth hurts once, but lies hurt forever. Don't let anyone convince you that silence is weakness. Sometimes silence is the moment before everything changes. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what you would have done that night. Because sometimes revenge isn't about shouting the truth. It's about letting the truth speak for itself.